All right, welcome in week 8 of the college football season. It's upon us. Happy Friday to you. We've got 5 games we're going to break down here. 3 individual breakdowns, including a game tonight. We've got, of course, a roundtable discussion on 2 of the bigger games coming up this weekend. SEC bound with Arkansas at home as a dog taking on LSU. And then, of course, for all the marbles, Georgia taking on number 1 Texas. That should be an interesting discussion. And as always, we are here for you. So if you are joining us live here on the stream, we certainly appreciate you doing so. Hit that like button if you could, and drop any questions you might have on these games coming up this week, because it is an all-important week. Number 8, make or break time for a lot of teams here. Nobody knows it better than the Friday A team here is Bryan Leonard in the house. Adam Trigger ready to roll. And the one and only TC Teddy Covers ready to roll. Gentlemen, let's kick it off tonight. Bryan Leonard. Oh, God. I don't know what makes me sick. Thinking about the New York Jets or thinking about the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Both really do make me ill at many points here, Bryan Leonard. But off a bye week, Gundy goes to Provo, taking on a BYU team nobody saw being this good, actually. Or are they this good? And should they be laying nearly double digits here at home against Oklahoma State?
Well, the Cowboys' offense has averaged 42 points per game in their first 3 contests. They've averaged just 18 points per game in the last 3, while the defense, the last 2 games, has allowed 80 total points. Oklahoma State's been blown away in line play. They average just 3.3 yards per carry while allowing 5.47 on the season. They've just been losing at the line of scrimmage all year long. Their only other game they played a ranked opponent was at Kansas State, and they lost that game 42-20. You mentioned BYU. Major surprise this season, stepping up to be a real contender in this conference, a lot quicker than a lot of us thought. We'll have to see how this works out in this one, but they've been very good. They come in undefeated with a perfect 6-0 record. The offense has been very consistent all year long, scoring 34 points or more in all but 1 game, that being an 18-15 victory at SMU. So even though the offense didn't score well, this SMU team is starting to play like everybody thought coming into the season. Defense has held all but 1 opponent to less than 20 points. As Baylor managed 28 hosting the Cougars. The strength of this BYU team is in the passing game. Their passer rating is 149.36. They've got a 15-5 touchdown to interception ratio. It's been excellent. As good as their quarterback play has been, the pass defense has been just as good. They've held the opposition to a 90.6 passer rating, a 4-10 touchdown to interception ratio. So they've got a big edge in the passing game in this one. And the way Oklahoma State has run the football this year, I would expect them to come out and try to pass a little bit in this one. I made this line 7.5. So it's inflated a bit from the current number. I believe it's 9.5 now. So there's a bit of betting value on the Cowboys. But are we willing to stand in front of this BYU team right now against a team that seems to be in a free fall? The extra time would help if the line got to 10. Maybe we would be considerate, but right now it's going to be a pass for me. If it gets to 10, I may take another look at this Oklahoma State team, but right now I don't want anything to do with them.
Oh, nothing warms my heart, Bryan, like knowing that they're going with the backup Garrett Rangel tonight at quarterback with his 45% completion record in his career. So it should be just fantastic for Oklahoma. Jesus, unbelievable. And not a defense I want to get in front of either, because this BYU is a real defense, that's for sure. All right, so we got 1 game here tonight, Oklahoma State, BYU. It's actually a pretty decent Friday card. And then, of course, we have a few other games of interest this weekend. And let's go, Trig, because I am... talked about this game on Bet On It with Kelly Stewart and Marco D'Angelo. And as you probably can understand, it didn't go well because Marco liked West Virginia. So you can imagine how terrible that conversation went. So I'm going to look for you to be the tiebreaker here. with K-State taking on West Virginia in Morgantown. Didn't work out great at home last week against Iowa State. They welcome in Kansas State. Any change here, Trig, with this West Virginia team, you think?
I have no idea, Joe, and that's why I wanted to break down Florida State Duke in this spot, because I have a really strong opinion there, and this Kansas State West Virginia game is puzzling to me. I talked about West Virginia last week. I kind of got them wrong. I thought we would see points in that game. So the best thing I have for Kansas State West Virginia, and maybe we can kick this around to the panel, is I would kind of go back to maybe the point showing up this week, because I thought that would have been a higher scoring game against Iowa State. It wasn't, but I'm still not buying this West Virginia defense. That being said, I do like them offensively, so I lean toward the over here.
You like the over in this matchup here, and I can't blame you there, because there's absolutely no reason to think that they're going to get anything other than points in this game here tonight. I mean, on Saturday. I do think it was interesting, the conversation and the argument. I'm not sure that I got anything particular from Marco and Kelly besides them yelling at each other and calling each other names. I'm not quite sure that we came actually to a decision on who they like to win the game. But boy, oh boy, there was a lot of name calling and yelling going back and forth with that one. So absolutely something worth going and checking out, guys. The description, you can check it out on the WagerTalk YouTube page, because it was actually worth the price of admission on that one there. All right, we do have, of course, a pretty interesting game as well, Teddy, coming up this weekend. I don't know what to make of this Arizona team. Do you? You got any clue as to what they are or what they aren't? I know some people thought that new coach and we would be getting a lot of guys stayed on offense, but the offense has been decent, hasn't been great, not what it was, of course, last year. So I don't know. And Colorado is a coin flip each and every week. So what do you do when these two teams get together?
So I lost with Arizona last week at BYU. So they're not necessarily a team that I'm going to think impartially and rationally about. But they were annihilated in that game. All right, they were physically manhandled. And the defense had no chance. What surprised me was that the offense had no chance in that game. I mean, it was over early. But the playmakers at receiver couldn't make plays against BYU. The offensive line didn't hold up. Those are concerns. And when we start to look at Arizona, see, of course, we're talking halfway through. They played half their games already. All right. The previous week, Texas Tech beat them. That was the last time they were a home favorite, by the way. Texas Tech's no juggernaut. Colorado battled Kansas State. Arizona got crushed by the same team. So we're talking about a Arizona team that's 1-5 against the spread. Last week, they were +3. They lost by 22. The week before, they were double-digit losers against the spread. We look at the season. What's the win? What's the cover? The Utah game. Oh, that bumped up their power rating big time, except for that it turns out Utah ain't all that. So we say, what do we think about Arizona right now? This is what I think about Arizona right now. Jeff Fish jumped ship for a reason, even if many of his offensive players stayed behind. All right, that was a one and done. Let's get a good year out of this program and move on to a program that can sustain success. I'm not convinced that Arizona is priced right in the betting markets right now. Again, 1-5 against the spread, back-to-back double-digit losses against the spread to show that the markets aren't there. And neither unit's playing well. Neither side of the football is playing complementary football. Look, Colorado's 4-2. They won on the road at UCF. They beat up Baylor. They won on the road at Colorado State. This team is a little better than I thought they would be. Travis Hunter's expected to suit up both sides of the football. And Arizona may not be priced right now. So they're not a team that I want my money on again this week. I think Buffs get to 5-2 here. Money line, Colorado.
Teddy, what is the ceiling for Colorado, do you think, here? Because certainly what the market wants them to be and what the reality of they are is two different things. But, I mean, is this a team that you can see making a run in any way, shape, or form, or at least getting to a pretty big bowl game? I mean, what is the ceiling for Colorado?
Well, we look at the back half of their schedule, okay? They have Arizona this week. They got Cincy at home next week, then a bye, at Texas Tech, Utah at home, at Kansas, Oklahoma State at home. There's not a team in that group that they can't beat with their A game.
Yep.
There's upside for Colorado.
Yep.
And the betting markets, again, Colorado's been a bizarre team because the public's been all over the Buffs and the wise guys have been fading the Buffs for the better part of the last 2 years. In general, the wise guys have done okay fading Colorado. That may not be the case moving forward. I do think that there's more upside with Colorado right now than I've seen at any point in Deion's tenure.
Yep, I agree, especially if they can keep Hunter healthy. It's going to be an interesting stretch. That's a very doable schedule, too, the remainder of the way for Colorado. Some wins they can rack up there for sure. All right, Trig, since we completely sent everyone over to see Kelly and Marco yell at one another for West Virginia and Kansas State, because it really is worth the price of admission. Why don't you had mentioned earlier Florida State and Duke tonight, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think Duke has ever beaten Florida State. There might have been like this rant, but I am fairly certain that in the history of Duke football, they have never once beaten Florida State. And I believe 13 of the last 14 have been double-digit wins by Florida State. So how the hell is Duke a favorite in this game? What are we doing here, Trig?
Yeah, so two things. First, apologies to the production crew for messing them up there. But the big Christmas, John Kenzie Noel has Trig in a giving mood because I cashed a 4%er with the Guardians last night. And I said, you know what? Let me switch it up. I'm just going to come out and give my client play for Friday on the show, which is Florida State +3. That's right. They've never beat Duke. 21-0 all time against Duke. Now, I want to start with the point I want to make is this before we get into the breakdown. If Florida State played Duke's schedule, Florida State would be 5-1. I truly believe that to be the case. I think if this Florida State team played Elon, Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee, North Carolina, and Georgia Tech, they'd probably be probably would be 5-1. I think you take the common opponent out here, Joe, of Georgia Tech. They both played Georgia Tech. Florida State lost on a last-second field goal in Dublin. Duke lost by 10. All 5 of Florida State's games have been harder than all 5 of Duke's other games. So I do think you need to take strength of schedule into consideration. But in the context that I think if you take the schedule out and the records out, Florida State is an average to below average ACC team. Probably they're not a bad team. I would call them below average in the context of this conference, but probably right in the middle. But I think Duke is there as well. That's the thing that gets lost in some of these records. And okay, Duke's 5-1. Duke barely beat North Carolina, who is now at the bottom of the league. They trailed 20-0 in that game. They probably should have lost. Squeaked out a 21-20 win. And then they lose to Georgia Tech. So I just don't really see why under that context you would want to lay 3 with Duke in this game. Now, I do think that Florida State making the change to Brock Glenn before the bye week and then having him go into the bye week as the starter is positive. Threw for 228 yards against Clemson, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He wasn't terrible. Actually, Florida State covered the closing number in that game. That went off, I believe, Clemson -17, and Florida State held it to a 29-13 game. So they covered. That's encouraging. And now they have 2 weeks to prepare for Duke, who's not a good offensive football team. They don't convert on third down. I think you're going to see, look at the total in this game, Joe, 42, suggesting that it's going to be an ugly game. I kind of feel like you might see something similar to that Cal FSU game that ended 14-9, just an ugly football game on both sides. But there's more upside here to Florida State. You listen to them in the media this week. Norvell wants to win this game. At least he talked like it. They asked him a couple times, are you going to get the young guys out there? Are you going to kind of treat this as a prep for next season? And he said, no, we're trying to win this game because we think we can get back into it. And you got to win this game to get back into it. At 1-5, if you can win here if you're Florida State, you're 2-5, and at least you're an upset away from maybe salvaging the season. I think you're going to see an effort from Florida State. People are going to say, okay, home run motivation spot for Duke. They've never beat Florida State. Well, let me tell you something, Joe. These Florida State kids don't want to be the first FSU school to lose to Duke in football. They should be equally as motivated to not have that happen. I think this is going to be a good football game in the respect that it's close, a sloppy football game, but Not a ton of scoring. The +3 has value, and I really like Florida State. I think the Seminoles win here.
Is it fair, Trig, to say, though, the one thing you worry about in this game is that you got a Florida State offense with a backup quarterback averaging 14.8 points a game? This is the best defense they will have faced yet this year. Does that worry you?
I guess my counter to that would be, how do we know Duke's the best defense they would face when they've played no one, right? They haven't really played teams that you would expect to like be devastating offensively. So I mean, other than Duke being what they are on paper, I don't know how you can make a statement about Duke like against the teams that they've played, and then make a statement about Florida State with the teams that they've played, because the competition has been so superior that I just don't think you can draw comparisons from what these teams have played so far. So I'm just going to go off the fact that like what I see is two teams that are relatively even, and you're giving me 3 points. I don't give Duke a huge home court edge. Home court. Been doing too much college hoop.
Way too
I don't
much.
give them a huge home field edge. So give me the 3. I make this closer to pick. Give me the 3 points.
Taking the points tonight in that game, guys. That should be an interesting one here, as Florida State looking to get it back on track tonight against the Duke Blue Devils. All right, if you're joining us here live today, we certainly appreciate you taking the time. Don't forget, give us that thumbs up, hit that like button, subscribe, become part of the WagerTalk TV family, and make sure you drop any questions about the Week 8 slate we've got. And, of course, those watching on replay, drop it in the comments section. We're going to be keeping an eye on this right up until kickoff. We'll answer any questions that you guys have about this slate of games, and it is a good slate of games in this Week 8 contest here in college football. So we've got some breakdowns on some of these standalone games. We're going to dive into the SEC because we got a couple of very interesting games this week that we're going to go roundtable style. We're going to start with LSU taking on Arkansas here. And Bryan Leonard, let me come to you because LSU fortunate that Lane Kiffin's teams are brain dead and that they were able to come back and win that game in overtime last week there. But, I wasn't exactly impressed with Nussmeier in that spot either. But they got the win at home, under the lights, barely. Now they're a favorite on the road against Arkansas. And here we go again. Arkansas with Pittman getting points at home in a dog roll. It's been very profitable. His teams usually show up in this spot. Can LSU keep it rolling, or is there any value with the home dog here?
When you talk about LSU, other than that cross-country trip to play USC in Vegas, they posted a perfect 5-0 record, including, as you mentioned, maybe a lucky win. And you're going to have a few of those as the season goes on. But, the Tigers knocked off a very good Mississippi squad, 29-26. I didn't see that coming. I thought Mississippi was a better team than that. And, it could have been. It's just a one-game sample. But this looks like a sandwich spot for LSU. They've got Texas A&M and Alabama on deck after this one, after that big win last week. And as good as the passing game has been this season, we do have some concerns about their pass defense. Arkansas 4-2 on the season, off their most impressive victory of the year, a 19-14 win over a suddenly failing Tennessee squad. Third straight game versus a ranked opponent. They played the Volunteers and they've got the Aggies. So this is 3 straight here for Arkansas against really quality opposition. The game could go either way. I made the line 3, LSU 3, so there's no value in the line for me. It's a pass for me. But to get back to what I talked about to lead into this, when they had to travel all the way to Las Vegas to play USC, when you're traveling that much of the country, it's really paid off to play the home teams in those matchups. We've seen it all season long in the Big Ten. There's been other spots where we've seen teams go across country and they just don't look like the same team. So it doesn't have any effect on this game, but it's something to keep in mind for the rest of the season, especially when you've got teams that have not played in that stadium before. So there's a big advantage. Normally in college football, you have maybe a 3-point advantage for home team. I usually pump that up to about 5 if the other team's never played there and they got to travel that distance. Doesn't have an effect on this game. I think the line is right. but it's something to keep an eye on for the rest of the year.
Teddy, what are you thinking here? It is quite the sandwich spot with LSU on the road now after that 22 of 51 performance by Nussmeier. Can we trust the LSU defense on the road to slow this running game down of Arkansas as well? It's been a problem for them. Do you like them in this spot as an away favorite? Uh-oh. Mute.
Oh,
mute.
sorry, guys.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Rather not cough live on air. And then, of course, I hit it 5 minutes ago and forgot about it. So I apologize. That being said, I'm much more interested in total in this game than the side. And the total really stands out to me. You ask, can we trust this LSU defense? I watched him in person against USC. That's a legit defense. That's a Brian Kelly defense. And they've only allowed more than 27 points once this season. All right. It's not like opposing teams have been marching the ball up and down the field, and they've gotten better as this season has progressed. They're playing Brian Kelly football right now. And Brian Kelly is not always, let's chuck it around. It's let's play defense and grind out wins. Lo and behold, LSU 3-0 to the under in their last 3 ball games. Arkansas's off a bye, but this offense isn't working. You know, they scored 24 against Auburn, 17 against A&M, 19 against Tennessee their last 3 games. They're not lighting up the scoreboard. They're also 3-0 to the under in their last 3 games. Had the opportunity to talk with Art DeCesar, who's over at the Westgate Superbook. He said, every sharp dollar in this game's come on the under, and I agree with that assessment. LSU, Arkansas, under is the way I would look.
All right, liking fewer points here on a team there that many people would run to the window and automatically bet the over, but not so fast, says Teddy here. I tend to agree with you there. And Trig, what about you, man? Big off the bye here. Pittman at home getting points has been profitable in the past. Do you think that they have the horses here to go toe-to-toe with LSU at home as a dog?
Yeah, I had LSU right on the panel discussion last week, and I'm kind of buying into the letdown spot here. And you also mentioned Pittman. First of all, like I don't think this would be that big of an upset. I make this closer to a pick with Arkansas at home. I guess weighting in favor of Arkansas for a couple of reasons. Pittman is fantastic off a bye. He's great as an underdog at home. I just followed Matt Grissom on a show I did this morning, who's an Arkansas Razorback, and he had a bunch of good stats, including Pittman is 6-0 straight up as an under, or as a just 6-0 straight up as a dog at night. So obviously at night in Fayetteville, they won a couple weeks ago against Tennessee, and then have the bye since then. Another thing that's interesting to me as well is their injury report is as light as it's been all season. So Arkansas got healthy in that bye week. I actually don't fully buy into this LSU defense yet. I think there's some concerns for them against the pass. Joe, last week, even in their win, 11 for 22, Ole Miss was on 3rd down. LSU had a hard time getting off the field at times in that game. Again, it's not something I bet yet, but Arkansas +3 is pretty tempting here. I think an Arkansas upset makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I almost like it that they had to buy, because the week prior it was the upset against Tennessee, although I don't know if that's an actual upset.
Well, how about this too? How about this? Arkansas is like 3 or 4 plays away from being 6-0, right?
Correct.
Like they're only a couple plays away from being 6-0. They lose a double overtime game to Oklahoma State, and then they lose in the 4th quarter to Texas A&M in a game that they led in the 4th quarter. So what's the number if they, if a couple things go their way?
Yeah, and listen, it's trust me, they outgained Oklahoma State by almost 300 yards and still figured out a way to lose. That was brilliant. So we do have an interesting SEC battle between Arkansas and LSU. Let's see if Brian Kelly has really figured it out with LSU this week on the road against the Arkansas. But the game everybody gonna be watching this week here, interesting spot, is Georgia taking on Texas here, number 1 versus number 5. And, Quinn Ewers back under center here. Texas, that's a real defense to me, Bryan Leonard. The Georgia defense is good, but I don't feel like this is the Georgia defenses that we've seen over the last couple of years? I know the offense of Texas can put up points. Less than I think Texas is the best defense in this game. Is it enough for them to be able to win and cover this game, though?
You know, I'm going to approach this one a little bit differently than the other two. Won't be any stats involved. This would be the dilemma I'm running into on this is my power ratings have Texas as a 9-point favorite here.
Woo!
Based solely on what has happened so far this season. They've been so much better than Georgia. So you would look at this line and you go, well, then you've got to play Texas. They're just such a better team. But based on what we expected before the season, as well as the recent history of this Georgia program, how can you really play that with confidence knowing the talent is there, the coaching is there, the experience is there, and to catch Georgia, who were a favorite, I believe, at Alabama earlier this year, even though it didn't work out the way they wanted. This is a tough situation to back this. There's a lot of guys, because it's such a popular game, there's a lot of guys who I know bet into this, and they're major players. They are as concerned as I am about what it is, because the stats, everything shows that Texas is a better team, but can you really play them laying this number against Georgia? Texas right now looks like the clear best team in college football. But there have been times just the last few weeks, others have been thought of in the same way. We've been talking about Tennessee on this program a few times. A while back, we just were standing in a line to bet on Tennessee. That offense was so good, nobody could stop it. Alabama beats Georgia. All of a sudden, Alabama, here they go. It's the same Alabama. And then we've seen the last few weeks that Alabama is not the same. This 2024 college football season reminds me a lot of the NFL for the last decade. How many times does a team really look good in the NFL and you go, this is the team to beat, and then the next week they lose a game to a team that they shouldn't have lost to? The eye test shows that Texas is a bargain. But I've been doing this for 45 years. Money is not that easy to be made in sports betting. So you have to play it with a grain of salt if you do like Texas. And this could easily turn into a blowout, but this could easily turn into a Georgia straight-up win. It's a game that everybody wants to watch, but I won't be getting involved with my money.
It's kind of been a mixed bag for this Georgia defense there, Teddy. I mean, we watched them open up against Clemson, who now is dropping 40 points a game like it's no big deal, except they could only put up 3 against this Georgia defense. But then we watched Bama put up 41 points against this defense. So it is the truth somewhere in the middle. It just doesn't feel like this is the shutdown, lockdown Georgia defenses of the last couple of years. Doesn't matter in this game.
It wasn't supposed to be. If you read over the summer, you know how many what Georgia lost defensively in the offseason to the NFL. This team, they are what they are. They're still, when you talk about the elite teams of college football, Georgia's on that list, man, but they're playing another one this week. And we saw what happened the first time where they fell down 28-0, pulled a heck of a rally, and then found a way to lose it at the end when the defense broke down. And we talk about defensive numbers. Texas, again, my metric is yards per play. All right. Forget all the total yardage. Yards per play tells you how good the defense is. Texas, number 1 in the country. Georgia, number 66. All right. That's all you need to know right there. I saw an interview with Kirby Smart yesterday. He was talking about the injuries that Georgia has suffered. The one area that he highlighted where we had the worst, where he said we have the worst problems right now, is on the offensive line. One thing you don't want to do going into Austin, facing the number 1 defense in the country, is have cluster injuries on your offensive line. We are asking guys who haven't had to perform. Now you got to step up and start against an elite defense. Georgia's 0-5 against the spread since that win against Clemson in the opener. 3 of the last 4, they've lost by more than 1 score against the spread. I understand they're battle tested. They played Clemson. They played Alabama. But you ask me right now, this is an overvalued commodity. And that's why the money's been pouring in on Texas. The sharp money's been pouring on Texas. And a line that opened 3 is now well over that. Texas has been tested too. They faced Michigan. They played Oklahoma. And obviously, they're after Oklahoma. I get it. Flat spot. This ain't no flat spot for Texas. All right. They go to Vandy next week. That's a flat spot. All right. Circle that now. The Commodores may well be feisty again, but Sark's got a winning record as home chalk every year that he's been in Texas with the Longhorns. I would only lay it in this matchup, but this isn't a client play. It's just an opinion.
Yeah. This is tough to get in. I do know an awful lot of folks that are thinking maybe the under is the way to look in this game, Trig, as well, that maybe less points is coming and not more points. But we do know Kirby Smart. You'd never want to back him when they're I believe the number was a 3-touchdown favorite or more. They don't usually cover all that well. But boy, as an underdog, I believe Kirby running with a 5-2 record right now since he got to Georgia. This is usually a spot where Georgia elevates and Kirby gets them ready to play. Do you have enough faith in them to back him in this one?
I don't. I actually agree with everything Teddy said, and I'll reference the same interview that he was talking about. Kirby Smart, they asked him about his team, and I think specifically his defense, and the comment the Texas defense, and the comment he made was, that reminds me of some of our better teams. Yeah. He said that. Those are Kirby Smart's words. And that's a little concerning when that's the kind of comment that I expect from a coach that's like 3-3 and it's like knows it's not their year, not the number 5 team in the country. That's like in the biggest game of the season. So, that is kind of what was something that was interesting to me. I think kind of agree with Brian though. Like this is like one of those games where the spot is so big. Like, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia just stepped up and kind of played their game. You go back to like the Georgia-Alabama game, the Ohio State-Oregon game last week. Like these are the types of games I'm kind of avoiding on betting on this year. It's like, could you just get the max out effort and Georgia just plays out of their minds and wins? Of course you could. Or, gets inside the 5. Like, I don't think that's like impossible by any means, but my numbers are in agreement with like Brian's as well. And kind of what Teddy says, like I kind of make Texas a bigger favorite than this, which again, other times would lead me to rush to the window and bet it, but I'm going to like hold back based on the fact that this is just such a marquee matchup, huge game. And I'm still worried that like Georgia hasn't played their best game yet. And I don't want to run into Georgia finally playing their best game. So I'm out of this one.
This might be just a better game to watch and have a good time with here, because it should be extremely interesting in a battle of top 5 teams. Let's get at it here. The reality is both of these teams, this may not be the last time they see each other too with a 12-team playoff this year. So anything is possible with Texas and Georgia. All right, so there we got it. We got a bunch of games going on here with that we previewed. 5 there, of course. We'll take a couple of questions from you guys, those of you joining us live here on the stream. We certainly appreciate it. Don't forget that thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you're just joining us here. We certainly appreciate the support. And if you're watching on the replay, if you've got a game that you're interested in that you want to know, we keep an eye on the chat rooms right up until kickoff. So drop it in the comment section and we will get your questions answered. And we're going to kick it off here with, and I believe, Brian, Roger Long has got a whole lot of questions here, but I'll narrow it down because basically USC traveling, coming across the country to the Eastern time zone, taking on Maryland. I don't know. Was Maryland looking? What the hell was that last week, Maryland? My goodness here. But they are getting a touchdown. They were getting 7.5, I believe here. How much faith should anybody have in USC coming across the country and Lincoln Riley in this spot to be able to cover by margin coming off of that heartbreak against Penn State?
I want nothing to do with Maryland. I thought all season long that Maryland was an overrated commodity. But then again, as I mentioned, you do have that USC team traveling all the way across the country. I'm seeing a couple 7.5s out there. If it's above 7 and I had to play this game, I probably hold my nose and play the Maryland. That's probably the right side here, but I'm not going to play Maryland. The problem we run into with college football, especially on Saturday, is there's so many games that have more value than, for example, the game we just discussed, the Georgia game. So if you're in it to make money, you have the choice of every game on the board. And it just so happens to be that none of the games that we've discussed I've actually thought had some value. So USC is the better team, no doubt about it. But that traveling, going across the country, we'll see what Maryland's made of. Maryland comes out and plays a good game here, then that's fine. But if Maryland doesn't, they may be a fade team the rest of the season.
Yeah, they very well could be here. I know another game that is getting some questions here in the chat room. And Teddy, I'll ask you. I don't know what the frig to do. Rutgers is the most frustrating team in the world. They won games they should not have won. I don't trust the offense. You know, the defense under Schiano is the defense. We get it, but my goodness, they should have lost to Washington, and yet here they are. Nobody wants to give UCLA any credit. I feel like UCLA is a team that's improving under the radar nobody's talking about, and they're always getting points, and they always seem to be covering lately. So is there any value on UCLA taking on Rutgers team at home here?
Yes, I think there is value on UCLA getting the points at Rutgers. I mean, obviously, we know the traveling coast-to-coast stuff hasn't worked great. And the Big Ten has been the worst in that regard. Of all the conferences, the Big Ten coast-to-coast travelers, 3-10, straight up 4-9 against the spread, including, last week where Washington got destroyed and on and on. It's an emerging trend, and it's a trend that makes sense. And, of course, you have the West Coast team traveling east for an early start game. So with a rookie head coach, which is all bet against for UCLA. But we talked a little bit about strength of schedule disparities. Certainly, Adam Trigger talked about it a lot when he talked about Duke and Florida State. Look at who UCLA has played. They had Hawaii week 1. Since that time, they played Indiana, who is the surprise team of the Big Ten, undefeated, LSU, Oregon, Penn State, Minnesota. There ain't a weakling in that bunch. All right. They played 5 straight games against good, great, or elite teams. And now they're playing Rutgers. Rutgers can't score. They're on a 2-game losing streak. They should be on a 3-game losing streak, but Washington missed field goals. That was good for my bankroll that night. Thank you. But it wasn't like Rutgers should have won that game. They scored 7 against Nebraska. They scored 7 against Wisconsin last week. That game was over by halftime. And coach's quotes, Greg Schiano is making excuses before kickoff. And to me, that's a big a red flag as you get. Quote, certainly we're banged up. We lost a couple more. We'll get into some of that stuff Saturday with the availability report. It'll be a challenge. We're not in a great spot with our health right now, but that doesn't matter. You need to make sure that whoever takes the field are prepared and ready to play their best. If they do, that's all you can do. This is not a team I'm comfortable laying points with, which means it's a UCLA or pass for this better.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Sorry, Schiano. But UCLA quietly, because the teams they have played is getting better and better, which is interesting here. Trig, we got a couple of questions coming in. I know I saw a question, by the way, in the chat room about UAB. Listen, don't ever play UAB in South Florida. Have to be the left. If you got backup quarterbacks for both teams, don't. Find something else to watch. Find something else to bet, because neither team is worth any of their weight in salt if they don't have their starting quarterbacks, which they haven't, which is what some of the problem is here. But Trig, I got to ask you here about Mario Cristobal coming up this week, because there seems to be an awful lot of market love for the U. But this is the game the U and Cristobal usually lose, right? It's big favorite on the road now, 5-point, taking on Louisville. Oh, this is, I don't know how you sweat out an under in this game, number one. But number two, where is that Cristobal game? It's got to be coming here, and it feels like they might win by a point, but they certainly ain't covering here. What do you think?
I actually think they do cover. I've watched, the ACC is the conference that I watch the closest. It's kind of how I've chosen to handle college football this year and make it more scalable. I really focus on the ACC and the MAC, and everything else is just kind of spots here and there. I've watched a ton of ACC football. I don't think much of it has been very good. I don't think the ACC matches up to the other leagues, but I do think Miami's the best team in this conference. I won't be surprised, Joe. The guest room is cleared out for you if you want to come up Thanksgiving weekend when we're playing for the ACC title in the Dome. Miami's last game, maybe to go unbeaten. I know people are going to be like, they should have lost to Cal, but they didn't. They found a way to get that one, get out of that one with a win. Virginia Tech, remember, they were a little bit tired there. That was a really bad spot for them against Cal. They had to go all the way out to the West Coast, college game day. They haven't had a bye yet this year, and they still find a way. You could almost argue that the Virginia Tech game the week before was the same thing, a primetime game, hadn't had a bye yet, and they find a way to win. Now they get a week off, to prepare for a Louisville team that I got to be honest, I thought that this team, I thought it was going to really like Louisville in this spot a couple weeks ago. I just haven't been that impressed with them the last couple weeks. I didn't think they played great against Virginia. I actually felt like they were kind of fortunate to win that game. Wasn't overly impressed with them the week before against SMU. So now you're going to give me Miami off of a bye week with a week to prepare. I have a pretty big gap between Miami and Louisville right now. So I'm not dying to lay 5 points on the road, but at the same time, I won't be on Louisville. I lean toward the U, keeping it going for one more week.
All right, liking the U to get it done here, at least for another week against Louisville. That is a big ACC matchup for sure that a lot of eyes are going to be on. We got a question in Instagram here, and I'll ask you, Bryan Leonard. Terrible spot for Oregon tonight, I guess Purdue, right? Laying 30. But who are we kidding? They can probably name their score, but what are the chances starters are actually playing in the fourth quarter in this game? I think they made the change from Hudson Card last week for Purdue. Brown, the backup, seems to be maybe a much better option for him here, but is there any way you can look at Oregon here? It just feels like the back door in the second half is going to be wide open in this one.
Yeah, you would think so. From an Oregon perspective, and we've already talked about all the big travel. And by the way, Teddy mentioned the Big Ten emerging trend. I lived in Cleveland for 37 years. The Big Ten has always struggled when they had to go west of the Mississippi, and I made a ton of money by doing that for years. So that's something that's been around forever. Oregon, the big travel here off of that Ohio State victory. It's obviously a letdown spot for them. Purdue, the quarterback, the new quarterback looked good last week, but it's a small sample size. How do we know if that's what they're going to get? And if you're a head coach at Purdue and you've been as bad as they have been this year, if he was really any better, don't you think he'd have made that move earlier in the season? So I'm not a big Purdue fan. This is a game where, and we see it all the time in college basketball, you'll see a 30, 40-point favorite. Obviously, the team could win by 100 if they wanted to, but they don't. This all comes down to motivation. What is the motivation for Oregon to run up the score? I don't think they have it. They're coming off that big Ohio State game last week. That was enough to keep them going, but it is a letdown spot. I just don't think Purdue is very good. Purdue is one of the worst teams in that league, if not the worst team. And somebody mentioned Indiana earlier. I think Indiana is one of the most overrated teams in the Big Ten. I'm looking to bet against Indiana the rest of the way, but there's too much uncertainties in this game for me to put my money on it.
Way too much uncertainty there. You like Nebraska against Indiana here. We got just 2 more questions here we'll run through. Teddy, I'm going to ask you real quick here because this has been such a strange line all week with the UNLV running Rebels in your backyard taking on Oregon State. Oregon State can't stop a nosebleed on the ground. We know that. I'm fairly certain you and I could probably rush for 100 against the way they've been playing. But Corvallis at night has always been a very dangerous place. Do we trust Oregon State in order to be able to win this game, or do you think UNLV just goes in there and runs all over?
So I like the total in this game more than the side, and the money's come the other way. The money's come to the under in this game.
Yep.
I did a big game breakdown on WagerTalk today, your Sports Central for game weekday, 9 a.m. here on the left coast, noon for you back east, right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. But I did a big game breakdown on WagerTalk today talking about this game, and I made a case for the over.
Ooh.
And UNLV is not a defense that I'm necessarily looking to fade. That being said, I trust their offense. And, of course, Hajj Malik Williams has been every bit as good as the man he replaced. Who's that guy that wanted an NIL deal? I forgot about that guy now. Williams, obviously, what's he got, a 10-to-1 touchdown interception ratio? He's been dynamite. And I believe that the Rebels offense will continue to click. I like UNLV's defense too. All right. But we've seen the last couple of weeks that it feels like the betting markets have kind of caught up with the Rebels. We saw the game against Syracuse. They were overpriced. Last week, they're up 41-7 against Utah State and failed to cover minus 19 in that ballgame. It's hard for me to get to the window with UNLV laying a price on the road in, as you mentioned, a tricky place to play. So I lean over here. I believe in the Rebels defense, but Oregon State, they moved the football up and down the field against Nevada last week. Was turnovers did them in. No surprise here if they have success offensively against a Rebel defense that's pretty good, but may not play their best in this instance. Lean over 59.5, the current number.
Liking over 59.5 in that one there, guys. That's for you. Brian Nichols, loving the U. Trig, he is with you on that. Speaking of which, one final one for you, Trig. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, but a lot of questions coming in on this Arizona State-Cincinnati game. I believe Arizona State's quarterback is out for this game, if I'm not mistaken. So I think, and listen, Arizona State, Trig, I think we've talked about him here on the show before. This was a team where we all thought maybe playing a little bit above their head. I believe Sam Levitt is out, and Jeff Sims, who feels like he's been around for a million years with Georgia Tech and Nebraska. What are you thinking in this one here, Trig? Because I'm seeing what, 4.5, 5? What do we got now in the market here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's like a ton of value at this point, but I lean towards Cincinnati. We talked about Cincinnati on this show a couple of different times. I thought they're a team that's like trending favorably for me. Like at least they have been since the beginning of the season. I referenced them losing to Pitt back in week 2 was kind of like a game that they had till they didn't. I believe they gave up 15 unanswered points in the fourth quarter of that game to sort of like blow a game that they really, not only should they have won that game at home, but now you look back and Pitt is sitting there 6-0. I go back just a second when I was saying like, okay, well, Miami's just like in a different class of these other teams in the ACC. The only other team that I think you could make an argument for is Clemson at this point, because 6-0 Pitt, I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but I think they're going to lose to Cuse next Thursday, or at least that's a good game. And then the other team in the mix is SMU, who kind of has looked the part, but has those early kind of head scratcher results there as well. So, I look at Cincinnati, just to bring it back into the context of this game. They could easily have had a win over Pitt. And then that Texas Tech game, they go on the road. That's a 44-41 shootout. That's another game that they really could have won. Come back last week, they win a road game at UCF. I thought that was an impressive result. Shut out Houston. I know Houston's not that great this year, but still, like, I like what I've seen enough from Cincinnati to think that this is going to be a tough spot for Arizona State. Down your quarterback and in a noon kickoff out here in Cincinnati. That's not where I want to have my money on the Sun Devils. So I lean towards Cincinnati winning, and I think they probably cover as well.
All right, leaning them that way. And there you got it there, guys. Sam Dog in the house. We're going to get to your question in just a second as we go around the table. As we mentioned, guys, week 8 the college football season is here. It's a great card tonight. It's a huge card on Saturday, and no better opportunity for you to partner up with these guys than right now over at WagerTalk.com. So, Bryan Leonard, let me throw it to you. No doubt you are locked, loaded, ready to roll here this weekend. And our good friend, I believe, is Sam Dog here, is mixing up shows, but we'll go ahead and throw it on the screen anyway and see if you have something while you're telling us what you've got going on at Wager Talk. Wants to know if you think the Avs are actually winning a damn game this season. Oh, I'm sorry, today.
With all the injuries they have right now, they should not be favored by the numbers that they are. Let's just put it that way. I don't have anything on that hockey game. I do have one playing hockey tonight, but it's not in that one. But Colorado, you're going on reputation right now, and they still have three very good players that are still in the lineup, but they've got no goaltending right now, terrible goaltending. And if you can't stop the opposition, there's no way I should lay that type of number. So yeah, they'll be good by the end of the season. They'll probably be back in the playoffs again, and they'll be a concern for everybody else. But right now, that's a team I'm looking to avoid.
We're going to avoid them there. Locked and loaded here for tonight in the NHL. Make sure you head over to Brian's page at WagerTalk.com. And Trig, I'd like to tell people to go and grab your 4% play on Florida State and Duke, but you already gave the damn thing out here on the show. So what else you got rolling over at WagerTalk, my man?
I told you, the big Christmas, John Kenzie Noel has Trig in a Christmas spirit. The giving mood. And I said, you know what? I'm not even going to put this one up for sale tonight. I played Florida State +3. It's a 4% play, but I do have a 5%er in college football tomorrow. That's up on my page. I've hit 3 straight 5% max bets. Ohio money line ended up being a bigger sweat than it needed to be last week for me, but that one got home and back-to-back winning weeks in college football. So giving you Florida State tonight, that's a 4% play +3, and I've got a 5% college football tomorrow afternoon up on my page at WagerTalk, wt.buzz/AT.
All right, no reason not to go grab it, guys. And Sam Dog, we appreciate you hanging out with us. All of you guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Do us a favor, give us that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so, because Teddy is no doubt ready to roll, not only tonight, Teddy, but it is a big week in college football and, of course, NFL Week 7, my man. What's locked and loaded, ready to roll for you?
Sure. Let's talk a little baseball as well, because 10-0, my last 10 in MLB, including a 5% big ticket winner last night with the Dodgers. We're in action again today in the Dodgers-Mets game. You can ride that 10-0 run right now. We're in action tonight in college football. Tomorrow's card has not yet been loaded. It's been a busy 24 hours for me. I'll get that loaded shortly. So check back my page, wt.buzz/TC. NFL Sunday already posted as well. So appreciate your support. Thanks for watching. And the likes, the follows, the comments make all the difference. Cheers.
Amen. Amen, Teddy. And guys, don't forget, if you're watching on the replay, drop those questions in the comment section. We're going to be watching it right up until kickoff on Saturday. So if you got any questions on the college games, drop them in the comment section. We appreciate you guys, of course, joining us live here every Thursday and Friday for the college football kickoff show. It's going to be a hell of a week 8. We got much more college football still to come. In the meantime, if it is game previews, the big game previews you guys are looking for, well, you don't have to go very far here, because the video on your screen will give you access to all the big standalone games, previews, best bets, just a click away. Go ahead and watch that now, and make sure you come back and join us again next week. Best of luck with all the plays, guys. We'll see you again soon here on Wager Talk TV. Good luck.